All right, we are breaking down one single really fiery interview with an Australian senator that honestly covers a ton of ground. National security, a major data breach, and a pretty deeply personal controversy. And it all kicked off with this one stark warning.
And there it is. That was the opening shot. I mean, what a dramatic claim, right? It immediately frames the entire conversation around this idea of a national crisis. And you can just feel it, setting a combative tone for everything that's about to follow.
So the senator's first target? The government's economic and energy policy. She basically argues that it's pushing the whole country down a really dangerous path.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because you can see the contrast she's painting. On one side, she's pointing to these huge geopolitical and resource issues. Not drilling for our own oil, not getting involved in the Strait of Hormuz. But then on the other side, she's just mocking the government's advice to everyday people as totally trivial. Use public transport. Check your tire pressure. It's that huge disconnect that's fueling this third world country frustration.
So from that really broad national critique, the interview just pivots on a dime. All of a sudden, we're talking about an internal security problem that directly hit the senator's own party, a major data leak from right inside Parliament.
So here's how this whole thing apparently unfolded. The party is claiming that Parliament's own IT department shared their private files with a bunch of other political offices. But get this, security didn't even alert them. It was a staffer in a rival office who noticed they had access to files they absolutely shouldn't have and gave them a heads up. The whole breach was shut down after about an hour, and now the federal police are involved.
And look, we're not just talking about some minor data here. The senator really stressed that these leaked files had incredibly sensitive information, including their draft policies. I mean, that's their entire political playbook, just laid bare for all their opponents to see.
Okay, so next, the interview moves into what is, without a doubt, its most personal and explosive topic, a staffing decision that had already drawn a lot of public heat from a political rival.
And this is the accusation that really set the stage for the whole debate. A political rival put it out there, framing the whole issue around judgment and safety, basically asking, why is someone with this conviction working inside Parliament House?
So how did the senator respond? Well, she didn't just defend the decision. Oh no, she launched a really powerful counterattack, framing the whole controversy as nothing more than a cynical political hit job.
You see, her immediate response wasn't to get into the specifics of the hire. Instead, she went right after the motive behind the criticism. By just calling it gutter politics, she totally reframes the debate. It's not about her party's judgment anymore, it's about dirty political tactics.
And then, wow, this was a really shocking moment. The senator uses this incredibly jarring, sarcastic metaphor to get her point across about the real-world consequences. She's saying that by forcing this man out of his job, his critics have basically just destroyed his life and his ability to provide for his family.
Her defense really came down to these key arguments. First, the staffer served his time. Second, he'd worked in her office for 3 years, and nobody, not female staff, not even a former federal police officer, ever had a problem. And finally, that this whole story was a year old and was only being brought up again now to do political damage.
And this quote is really the emotional peak of her whole argument. She's claiming that this public shaming is basically a death penalty for his career, that it's completely stripped away any chance he had to rebuild his life after, paying his debt to society.
But the interviewer, he doesn't let it go. He presses on, pivoting away from the emotional defense and right back to a direct question of policy. He wants to know how this whole situation lines up with the party's own tough-on-crime platform.
And man, this was a direct and really difficult question. The interviewer is essentially asking, would the very man you employed and are now defending, would he, hypothetically, be on the public sex offender register that your own party is pushing for?
And her response, well, it really highlights the tension perfectly. She just refuses to answer directly. She deflects, saying it was a matter for her colleagues, and this, of course, left that big, apparent contradiction between her party's policy and her actions just hanging in the air, completely unresolved. So ultimately, this entire superheated exchange leaves us with this really fundamental question, doesn't it? It's a debate that pits the whole idea of rehabilitation against very real concerns for public safety. And it just goes to show how incredibly complex and personal that line can be, especially when you're in the world of politics.